What's up guys, in today's tutorial I'm going to be explaining everything that you need to know about animating inside of Roblox Studio. Animation inside of Roblox Studio is incredibly popular right now and incredibly important in making any sort of game inside of Roblox. So let's go ahead and get to work on animating, or at least explaining how it works. So first off, we're going to want to go up here to the avatar tab. Now the avatar tab on the top is home to everything animation. This will hold all your tools that you'll need for animating, all your settings, all sorts of stuff that's great for animating is going to be found in the avatar tab right up here. Now the first step to animating is we need a character to animate itself. And that is where the rig builder comes in. You'll find the rig builder sort of in the middle of your screen on the very top right here, and it should be called rig builder. Now the rig builder is exactly what its name is. It builds rigs. And a rig typically refers to the skeletal structure and animation system of a 3D model, which is often used for characters. And if you click on the rig builder, this little window should pop up. It's going to say generate rig, and here's where we're going to put in all the different settings that we want for our rig. Now, the rig type R15 or R6, these are two different types of rigs. The first one, R15, it stands for a rig with 15 body parts, which means it has more joints than R6. R6 is the same thing but with only 6 body parts. So R6 will have a torso, a left arm, a right arm, a left leg, and a right leg, and a head, whereas R15 will even go into lower leg, upper leg, foot, and so on. So I'm personally going to be choosing R15. I think this will allow for smoother animations, however you can choose R6 if you would like to. After that, you have the body shape, which will be masculine or feminine, and then all of these different rigs. I'm personally going to leave it on masculine and choose the block avatar, which is most common for animating, but feel free to choose whichever one you'd like to. After that, it should spawn a rig inside of your game right here, and you can feel free to drag it wherever you wish to. I'm just going to leave it right here on the spawn location because I think that works pretty well. That's about all you need to know about the rig builder itself and how to build rigs. You can build as many rigs as you would like to. However, it's time to get animating, the thing that you've been waiting for. We're going to be using the animation editor. It should be 2 blocks over to the right of the rig builder and all the way on the right of all these buttons right here. So let's click on the animation editor right up here. When you open this up, you should see a new window pop up on your screen. It doesn't really matter where it is, however, if it's on the bottom, that is most preferable. You'll see a lot of different buttons, and you don't want to press any just yet, because we're going to be explaining those a little later on. And as you can see right here, it's telling us to select a rig to animate or create a new rig by selecting the rig builder, but we already did that. So all we need to do is just hover over our rig that we wish to animate and then click on rig. And when we do that, it's going to ask us to name our animation. I'm personally going to name this animation tutorial because that is what I'm using this animation for. However, if you're making something like a punch or a kick or maybe even a jump, you can just name it to any of those names. Now, once we're done with naming our animation, we simply click on create, and you're going to see a whole range of things that just happened. First off, what you need to know is this blue line right here, or this draggable slider, is what we call the scrubber. You can think of it sort of like a toilet scrubber or even sometimes a toothbrush if you would like to. And the timeline is this rectangle right here that has all these little lines inside of it, and it holds the scrubber itself. The timeline refers to a graphical representation of keyframes and their associated animation properties over a period of time. So as I mentioned, this is a draggable slider. So as you drag the scrubber along the timeline, it'll provide a visual preview of the animation frames at different points in time, but we don't actually have any of those yet. And the whole point of the scrubber is this will allow you to see how your animation progresses and make adjustments as needed. Let's go over the interface on the left now. First, you'll see the animation name on the very left right here. It should be named after whatever you named your animation, whether that be punch, kick, whatever. Mine is animation tutorial, so it's going to be right here. After that, the ... or the 3 dots right here will be for everything that we need to do for when we're finished animating. This will hold everything like saving our animation, publishing our animation, and setting the animation priority, which we'll get into a little bit later. So this first button right here will move the scrubber to the very first frame, and we can test this by clicking on here, and you can see the scrubber will move all the way to the very first frame. This next button right here will move the scrubber to the previous keyframe, or the previous frame where there is a animation frame. This button right here, this is a play button, and it's going to play your animation in reverse or backwards. This next play button will play the animation normally or just going forwards. This button will move to the next keyframe instead of the previous one. And this button right here will move to the very last frame, but we don't actually have that frame created just yet. Last but not least, this button right here, it's called the looping button. When you press this, it will toggle whether or not your animation will loop, which means that it will repeat itself. After that, we have the scrubber time or position inside the timeline, and that is this box right here. The scrubber time changes where the scrubber will be at a certain time, and there's something you need to know about this. A lot of people get this mixed up. They think that the seconds are on the left and the milliseconds are on the right, and that is simply not true. How this works is that we have the seconds on the left and the amount of frames over on the right. You can test this by putting maybe 1 second over here. Actually, we'll just put it at 0 one more time because we don't want to go past the timeline length. And then I'm going to give a certain amount of frames. So let's go 17 frames in, and you can see it's going to be frame 17 that's at, which is very cool. After that, we have the timeline length. This will determine how long our timeline is. Once again, it has the amount of frames on the right and then the seconds on the left. So if I were to put this at 2 seconds, you can see that the timeline will elongate to allow for many more frames inside of our timeline here. After that, this little name right here will display the name of the rig that you're animating. This IK button, this is for IK controls or inverse kinematics, which I have a video that you can watch up in the top right of the screen here, and that will explain how inverse kinematics works. Now over here we have this plus button, and when we click on this plus button, you're going to see all these different things called animation tracks. Now you can add one at a time if you would like to, or you can press add all body. And when we add all body, it's going to add in every single track for each and every single body part or limb that we have. And if you would like to, you can open these up by clicking on the little arrow to the left of the name, and you can change the position and the rotation very precisely with all of these different axes right here. However, I'm going to be showing you how we can do that normally. So let's close off of this arrow right here, and I'm just going to be on the very first frame. So now we get to actually mess around with our rig, and you can select a body part of your rig right here or a limb by simply just hovering over your part and clicking on it. I'm just going to grab this guy's right shoulder, and you should see this little rotation tool. If you don't see it and it's more of an arrow like this, you can simply press R, and that will change the tool that you are using. If you try and go up here and press on the move or scale or rotate tools, all that stuff, it's going to kick you out of the animation editor. All you need to do is just click back here to continue using it. However, it's best to just get used to the keyword R, and that will change the tool that you are using. I'm personally going to be using the rotate tool, however the move tool is great if you would like to use that. A cool tip is that if you go up here in the avatar tab and turn off the check marks for both rotate and move, this will allow for much smoother rotation and even movement inside of your animation editor. So here's where you get to go out and just move certain pieces of your rig here, and this will change the way that the rig is positioned, which is pretty cool. I'm just gonna move his arm something like this for the moment, and let's move it maybe just a little outwards, maybe something like this. Now we get to move our scrubber a few frames ahead, and we can do the same thing with the other arm. I'm just going to do this and maybe move it out a little bit. So now we have our guy in a powerful stance, and if we move our scrubber back to the first frame, you can see that our arm is actually moving with all the different frames. And we can play the animation by clicking on this little play button, and that will play our animation, which is very, very cool. You can feel free to do this with the legs and the arms and whatever way you'd like to do this. You can even rotate the torso around and even move the whole guy himself. But that's a little bit of a funky animation, so I'm just going to leave him right here in the middle. And I forgot to mention, but those little diamonds you see in the timeline, those are called keyframes. There are specific points in time where you define the position and rotation of your rig. And these little white lines in the timeline, those are called time units that you just use to move the scrubber to a precise time or frame in the timeline. Another tip that I have for you, let's say you're making a looping animation, so let me click on this loop button. What you want to do is you want to right click on your first animation keyframe and then click on copy selected. This will copy your first keyframes. Then over here you want to paste your keyframes at the end of your animation, and what this is going to do is going to set the starting point directly to the end point. And that is perfect because when our animation loops, it's going to go to the first frame where it will start up again. Let me show you. So when we click play while it's looping and the last keyframe is the same as the first keyframe, it's going to give us a very smooth loop like this. However, let's say I were to delete this last keyframe, you can see it's going to be very choppy and not very great because it's going to this keyframe and then immediately restarting. So that's about it to animation. You can add as many keyframes as you would like to, and all it is really rotating and positioning things. Of course, there are lots of different things that you can do than just moving a character around. However, I'm going to be covering that in a more advanced animation tutorial a little later down the road. Let's go in how we can actually save and publish our animation. So now we have our animation complete. So the first thing we want to do is just go over to these three dots over here as we mentioned earlier. And here's where we get to set the animation priority. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but the animation priority has all these different priorities that are set. Action 4 is going to be the top priority for the animation to play at, whereas core is going to be the very least animation priority. All of these have a different priority and a different thing that they're used for. After that, we can simply click on Publish to Roblox. So what Publish to Roblox does when we click on this is it's going to ask us for a title for our animation. I'm just going to put this at Animation Tutorial, just the same name as my animation, and it's going to ask us for a description. So we can put this as something simple like subscribe to Rustysillyband, which you should do if you haven't already. Help support the channel and it's completely free, so make sure you do that if you would like to. And then here's where we get to choose the creator. So now the creator is the person that is actually creating the animation. If you are making the game, let's say you created the game itself, you'd set the creator as me, and this would work perfectly. But if you're in Team Create, where you're playing with a friend or you're making a game with a friend, then you want to make sure that the player who owns the game publishes the animation with them as the creator. So in this case, it would be your friend. Now, last but not least, if you are creating the game inside of a group, you want to make sure that the creator is set to the group. Let's just put one of my groups right here, like Silly Devs. I'd want to make sure that the creator of this animation is the group that I'm making the game inside of. If you don't follow these few things, then our animation probably won't be seen by other players, unfortunately. So just make sure the creator is set correctly, and that is all that we have to do. After that, make sure we click on Submit, and once that's done loading, it's going to spit out your animation ID. You can click on this little box right here to copy the ID, and you can even find your animation ID on the toolbox or on the web by clicking on this link that they provide for you. After that, you're going to click on close, and we can close off the animation editor. So that is how you can actually publish your animation. If you'd like to go back and make changes to your animation, you sure can by opening up the animation editor and just reselecting your rig, unless you haven't really done anything since then, and you can make any changes to your animation. However, from there you will need to republish your animation and just follow that process once again. However, if you would like to script your animation, where you play your animation in-game, I'm going to show you how to do that. If you don't know already, then I'd recommend learning how, because it's very simple and will help you a lot. Let's just go and click on our rig inside of the workspace, click on the plus icon to the right of that, and then add in a script. Let's get rid of this first line right here. You can delete that. And we're going to start off with something that we call a variable. So I'm going to say local animation. Now the animation is the name itself for our variable, and the local is a keyword that we use to define a local variable. So local animation will be equal to instance.new, parentheses, quotation marks, animation, just like this, and this is going to create a brand new animation instance for us to use inside of our game. After that, we say animation.animation ID will be equal to quotation marks, rbx asset id : / and then we paste our animation ID from earlier. So it appears that I forgot to copy my ID. That is no problem whatsoever. All we have to do is just click on home right here, go over to the toolbox right here, and then we simply click on these 4 boxes right here, and this will open up our inventory of everything that we have made or used before from our inventory. So from then we just want to click on the My Models button right here. It should be a drop down menu where you just click on My Animations, and then you can right click on your animation that you just made and click on Copy Asset ID, and now we can paste our animation ID just like this. Now unfortunately you can't use My Animation ID. It has to be one that you have created or that your group or friend has created, and from then we can simply say local. Now here's where we need to create something that we call the animation track. The animation track is what we use to play or load the animation on an animator which is inside of a humanoid. So we say local animation track will be equal to script.parent.humanoid. This will get the humanoid of the rig itself right here. We'll say script.parent.humanoid.animator. Now the animator is what is responsible for loading the animations, and we're going to say load animation with parentheses, and we're going to put our animation variable inside of here. So what this is going to do is going to load our animation that we created right up here, and it's going to store it inside of this variable right here. So now in order to actually play the animation, we simply say animation track : play with parentheses. So what this is going to do is it's going to play our animation on our rig. And we can test this by clicking on this little drop down menu beneath our play button and then clicking on run. Joining the game, you can see our animation is playing on our rig. If you guys made it this far in the tutorial, thank you so much for watching. I know I already made a few tutorials on animation in the past, but all of those are either outdated by now or I just didn't cover everything that I would like to cover. If you're looking forward to the advanced tutorial, leave a comment down below and I'll try and get back to you. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or learned from it, make sure you like, subscribe, and even comment down below if you'd like to. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.